Hello, and welcome to the Okanagan Reader. I'm your host, Jim Bowering. This reading is Chapter 32 of Green Comet, the first book in the Green Comet trilogy. I'm having fun with those outdoor videos, so you can expect to see more of them. We'll see if any of the local audience can identify the locations. In Chapter 32, Fran is beginning to suspect that the visitor is not what they are assuming. Meanwhile, their message to Orange Comet is on its way. People are beginning to think of getting back to normal, but Fran and Buzzard come to a horrible realization. Of course they do. How could we possibly have a story if they didn't, right? Anyway, here we go then.
Chapter 32. Orange replies. Why did you say that you don't think the visitor has apophenia? They were on their balcony enjoying breakfast while the square woke up. Elgin was looking at the crack in the pillar next to their apartment. The lighting within the ice showed it up nicely, and he was thinking about how things had changed since the crack was their biggest problem. I'm not sure yet, said Fran. It's still just a feeling, really. She savored a sip of iceberry juice. When I was researching the visitor for last week's meeting, I learned quite a lot about it. She paused, looking at something, or more probably nothing, on the other side of the square. It didn't worry Elgin, though. Her eyes didn't look the way they had before in her dark time. Soon enough she came back, glancing at him, a little amused at herself. I read a lot of descriptions, and heard some, and saw quite a bit of video, too. She frowned. I can't explain it yet, but I seem to have formed the impression that the visitor is different from us. Now she laughed at herself. What an insight, eh? Elgin chuckled along with her. Obviously I'm not ready to put it into words, she said. Oh no, said Elgin. You're doing fine. She slapped his shoulder, and he ducked, grinning. But you have this feeling, and I know enough to know that it will come to something eventually. We just have to wait till it's ready. He took a bite of toast and crunched it up. So, he said, your message should be about halfway to Orange Comet now. They sent it last night just before bed, and Orange would receive it, if they were listening, by the end of the working day. Yes, I can't wait. But she was going to have to wait, of course. Even if they replied right away, which they wouldn't, it would be tomorrow before it arrived. But it would take some time before they were ready to reply. If they decided to use radio, then they would have to study the Rosetta Protocol and spend some time composing the message. More likely they would use the cosmic ray method, and that meant having to build a particle accelerator first. Stanton estimated that would take about a month if they were starting from scratch, so that's how long Frances was prepared to wait before she started to worry. Me neither, said Elgin. Meanwhile, I think it's time to get back to work on the joining. It had been months since anything substantial was done about that. Other than critical safety inspections and basic structural analyses, virtually nothing had been accomplished since the visitor revealed its intentions. Oh yes, said Fran. It will be good to do something normal for a change. They shared a laugh at the idea of joining two comets being normal. What are you planning to do? I've already been studying the sensor data, getting an idea of what it looks like. He smiled proudly. You know, the real thing is a lot like the simulations. Buzzard's work in particular is very close. I think we have his smoke ring to thank for that. He analyzed the data to within a micrometer of its life. Yeah, said Elgin. Wasn't that amazing? Well, he's an amazing young man. Stanton is so proud of him. Yeah. They enjoyed the moment. Anyway, we need to start thinking about some construction projects. We'll need a corridor linking the two comets first, I think, and we need to begin a proper survey of resources. You mean with all the analysis we did for the joining, we still don't know that? No, that was all structural. Now we need to identify specific resources and map locations and quantities. She seemed distracted, but she asked, "That's going to be about a 30-kilometer corridor, isn't it?" "Yes," he said. "It gives us an excellent chance to engineer that curve you were talking about." "Oh?" "Yes, you remember." He studied her, puzzled. "Oh, right," she said. "The underground orbit." "That's right." She was lost in her thoughts. "Granny?" She surfaced. "I'm sorry," she said. "Did I miss something?" "No," he said, "but something is obviously on your mind." "It's nothing," she said. "It is so. When I talked about inventorying the small comet, you went somewhere in your head. Is there something I need to know?" "No," she said. I don't think so." "Oh, I don't know." He could see her concentrating on it, digging for whatever answer was there, whatever explanation she could give him. So he waited patiently. Finally she told him, "It's not clear yet. I can't tell you exactly what it is or justify why I feel it, but it feels as if there's no point in thinking about the little comet." That chilled him. After the effort they went to, and the sense of accomplishment they achieved, what could be so dire that it would become irrelevant? "But you say it," he said, "and I know it's right." The time for the message to reach Orange Comet came and went, and there was nothing to do then but wait and hope there'd be a reply. They had some antennas pointed that way just in case they decided to use radio, and they got something at about the right time. Given the time for the signal to get there at the speed of light, and the time for one to come back, plus a little more to decipher the message and compose a reply, the short burst of static could have been real. But it could just as easily be only another bit of static like they picked up all the time. It was Buzzard who figured it out. In the same way he figured out what the light signals from the small comet meant that day they showed Elgin the bubble, so he figured out the response from Orange Comet. It happened at work when Elgin told him how long the message was. 1.79 seconds, Elgin told Fran. Pretty random, right? But when I told Buzzard, he laughed and said it was a response from Orange Comet. He was grinning and shaking his head. "They sent a message already?" asked Fran. "No, it's not a message in that sense. There's no pattern in it at all. It's a completely random bit of static." "But Buzzard thinks the length of it is significant? Why?" "It's not even the length itself, really. It's just the number. He told me what it was, and I looked it up." Elgin digressed. "Not that I needed to, of course. That's not the sort of thing Buzzard makes a mistake about." "No," said Fran. "It's hard to tap your foot in microgravity, but it is possible to look as if you want to." "Oh," said Elgin. "I bet you're wishing I'd get to the point." "Yes," said Fran. "Okay. Well, 1.79 seconds is significant because, according to Buzzard, 1.79 angstroms happens to be the atomic radius of gold." "Of gold?" she asked, astounded by the improbability of such a connection, while also impressed by its beautiful symmetry. "Gold?" She clapped her hands and laughed for joy. "It is a message," she said. "Orange Comet is okay, and they will be sending us more by the cosmic ray method." That's what Buzzard thought, too. "This is wonderful news. Now all we have to do is wait." Knowing that they would be getting a reply took the stress and worry out of it, but it also led to impatience. It was going to be a long month, so they decided the best way to wait was to work. Elgin and Buzzard started on designing the new corridor, the orbital as they took to calling it, including how it would join the small comet and what it would join to on the other side. Stanton began laying the groundwork for a complete survey of resources in the small comet, and Fran, as always, was busy with the planning committee. The month went quickly at that. The work and the puzzles that needed solving engaged their minds so well that when the message did arrive, although it wasn't a surprise, it caught them doing something else. That didn't stop them from dropping everything and running to the meeting room, though, so there was a good crowd there. Winston was seated at the table, flanked by Francis and Nigel, a single sheet of permapaper in front of him. Elgin took up his accustomed position, standing with Stanton and Buzzard against the wall opposite the front of the table. He looked at Fran to see if she knew anything, but she shook her head with a tiny shrug. The conversation in the room went in waves, building to a roar, and then suddenly dropping to near silence before building up again. It was roaring when Winston picked up the paper, and before he had it completely off the table, silence descended with a bang. This was reminiscent of last time Winston had an important message to read. Last time they didn't know what to anticipate, and they got bad news. This time they were expecting good news, but underneath was a thick layer of apprehension. Winston tapped the table with the paper. "This morning," he said, "we received a reply from Orange Comet." He waited while relief washed around the room. "They sent it using the cosmic ray method, and we deciphered it using the Rosetta protocol, as explained by Francis." He paused, and she was given a round of applause. "We captured exactly 1,667 gold atoms, and the first two we examined were identical." An appreciative cheer went up. "The first thing we discovered was that they have already increased the character limit to 2,000. The cheer became thunderous. In the grand picture it was a fairly minor thing. They knew there was room for improvement in the message size, and that it would come inevitably and soon. But this confirmation seemed to be a sign that there was good news left in the world. Winston let the released tension run out. There was no hurry. Finally someone called out, "So, what does it say?" And everyone focused on Winston. He held up the paper and began to read. "Greetings, Green," it started, and it continued in the same terse economical style. It consisted mostly of facts, beginning with their position, orbital specifics, and velocity. There followed information about their population, frozen and animate, including how many children had been born on the comet. There was even a note of the suicides they had had, 11. It was short, and the language was dry, but somehow it conveyed the spirit of Orange Comet. They felt closer to their sister comet now than they ever had. It made the final 27 characters more strange. They didn't fit the style of the rest of the message or the content. Winston read it in a puzzled tone. It said, "Visitor von Neumann Machine." After a confused silence, everyone talked at once. Everyone, Elgin noticed, except Francis. From the moment Winston finished reading the message until the meeting broke up, she didn't say another word. She met his eyes, and he could see an understanding in hers. When she glanced at Buzzard next to him, he saw a tacit realization pass between them. He was excited and curious to find out what they knew, but a little scared, too. They had that satisfied, almost triumphant air of discovery, but he detected an underlay of unease. As they crossed the square after the meeting, they heard Winston reading the message over the public address system. He did include the last phrase. They'd wondered if he would. When they left the meeting room, he was still debating with himself whether he would or not. They were proud of him for leaving it in. He chose to trust the people to deal with the anomaly, rather than holding it back to save them from the dissonance. Stanton and Buzzard were coming back to the apartment with them. They needed to talk. It was obvious that Fran and Buzzard were holding it in, waiting until they got somewhere less public, so the four of them made a beeline for the balcony, then went straight into one of the front rooms. Immediately, Fran and Buzzard started talking, but it wasn't in complete sentences. Elgin and Stanton heard fragments and obscure references to things that the other two seemed to have discussed before, but it wasn't making a full picture for them yet. They could have interrupted, asked questions, demanded to be included, but they were smarter than that. They knew that a few minutes of patience would be rewarded, and it was. They stopped talking, looked each other in the eyes, and nodded. Then Fran turned and said, "I'm afraid we have to separate the comets."